Okay, adjusting this just a little bit. I just kicked kids out of the room, making sure we have light and you can see me. Give me just a sec. There we go. So, one more thing. I'm hitting live, and there we go. All right, so good evening. It is Tuesday. If you have any questions, please put them in the live chat. I'm happy to answer. Our regular format is usually I sort of chat for a little bit, and as questions come in, I answer them. Just sort of discuss what's been going on. Today, I had an interview with the TV station. I also had an interview yesterday, and what you will start to notice is a very concerted push from the independent candidates that, hey, you need to include us. And though the TV stations in the past, for example, in 2018 and before, were very egalitarian about including anybody who was on the ballot in the debates, especially since we now have ranked choice voting, the media generally is sort of leaving it out. And I'm sure if you've paid any attention to the race, you would have had a look at articles. It's a very popular race. It's nationally getting a lot of attention, but it's like there's only two candidates, and that's just simply not the case. We have this wonderful panel of candidates that range all over in the spectrum and views. We've got this rich, very interesting race, and it's being made out to be a two-pony race, and that's really just not the race that it is. So you'll notice that Lisa, Max, and I are pushing back on that narrative a little bit and saying, hey, please cover this race. It's a very interesting race. We've got great candidates, and it's a whole spectrum of views. It's not like there's four of us that are exactly the same. We've definitely got a range. Max is a bit of a wild card. Lisa is hardcore green and love her for it. It's not quite my positions, but she's very passionate about being a green candidate, even though she's running as independent. Then we've got two regular party candidates. And if you follow me on social media, you know that I am, I'm not necessarily, I don't have a left or a right bend. What I have is I've got a dedication to the law bend. So sometimes that makes me sound incredibly liberal because I'm deeply passionate about human rights, and sometimes that makes me sound much more conservative because I've got a very fiscally prudent streak, and sometimes I don't sound like either party at all. So you'll notice there's quite a range, and if you see news sources sort of making it seem like it's only a Democrat and a Republican, though there is an argument to be made that I'm not technically on ballot yet because I'm still in litigation about that. The other two candidates are Lisa and Max. They're on ballot. So make sure that they're covering that spectrum. We have a real opportunity in Maine to do something different. I was asked this morning what we have that, in Maine, what makes my campaign so special? And the answer I had is we have the opportunity in this race to do something just amazing that isn't available anywhere else because we have ranked choice voting. So if people in Maine, if we really truly are just over the money, we have the ability to say, look, Tiffany's a completely reasonable person. I may not agree with everything she says. It would be weird if we agreed on everything, but she seems to make reasonable, thoughtful choices. She seems to totally nerd out on the law, and that's her jam. So I'm going to, it's not going to cost me a penny. I'll put her as number one. And if everybody else does it too, great. Then we've defeated all of the money, all of the millions that have poured into this race, and it didn't cost us a dime. And that's something pretty phenomenal that we can do. If you think about the amount of energy it would take to overturn Citizens United, just the political will, it's not there. Even if you got every single Democrat on board, there's still not the political will, although I think that you're going to see Democrats fighting it too. But that, you're looking at a constitutional amendment most likely to have that happen. And that's going to be just intensely problematic and very difficult to achieve. In the state of Maine, we could just, with one vote, with one Senate vote that literally doesn't cost a penny and literally doesn't have any risk associated with it, we could say, you know what, you don't need money, and we're going to prove you don't need money, and we're going to send forward a pretty boring, reasonable person who seems generally qualified and into this stuff. And they specifically didn't take money. And what we're telling you, nation, is that anytime somebody says you need $100 million to run an election like Dr. Evil, it's not true. And so that's something that I'm really looking forward to when I am finally on ballot, that we can really start pushing that, and we can really say, let's get the money out. Let's push money into our community. Let's really invest in us instead of investing in a candidate. You know, for a candidate, we should just be able to put up our positions and you can ask us questions and see if we're reasonable. It's a job interview. We don't have to make it this circus. So that's really what I'm going to be focusing on now that I'm past all the submissions for litigation. There's one more piece of paper I have to submit that's sort of procedural. All of the filings are in, so it's just waiting on a judge. So you're going to really see me the next few weeks pushing on a few things. One of those is, wouldn't it be amazing if we could just get the money out? And again, it costs us nothing. It's a freebie. Maine has a freebie to say it doesn't cost a penny and there's no risk in this election, and we can show the whole country how to get money out of politics. I'm so excited about that. Like I'm giddy. I was talking about it earlier and my 9-year-old was like, Mom, you sound like one of those YouTubers who gets way too excited. And I probably do sound like one of those YouTubers who gets way too excited, because I'm jazzed that we have the possibility finally to do this in a statewide race. We took this for a test drive in 2018. And now that I don't have to say, you know, please shop from one of these businesses, but only in one of these 375 municipalities, and, you know, line it up on a map and figure out how to shop in just this district. I'm so happy we can take this for a test drive in a statewide race and say, look, if you want to support my campaign, tell people about me. But the way you tell people is go shop at their business, donate to causes you care about, leave a note that says Tiffany Bond is running for the United States Senate. She doesn't do fundraising, she does Maine raising, and she told us to help you and support the community. That, I think, is just the most phenomenal thing we can do. We can put the millions back into the community, and we can not spend a penny on all of the waste and the yuck that's really killing us. And particularly with COVID, anything we can do to support the small businesses is just going to be huge. You know, and a couple of orders for face masks, or, you know, custom-made moccasins, or there's so much that's made and manufactured in Maine. And particularly if it's artisanal and small batch and local, you know, it's a great time to be getting jams that are all coming into season right now. The berries are all coming in. There's great fresh jams. Supporting our community is a wonderful way to get you something, and it's a wonderful way to just invest that back in. And, you know, that flat of strawberries that's turned into jam that's sold on Etsy, that could be the difference between somebody eating and not. So if you're going to be plowing money into politics, please plow it into the community. Please plow it in a productive way, and let's see what we can do to get the money out. Other things that have happened this week. So we are apparently all the way into fascism at this point in time. I'm really very concerned that we have candidates in this race that won't even say the word fascism. And if you can't say the word, I think you're probably not qualified or equipped to deal with it. So we've gone all the way over to fascism at this point in time. We have unmarked vehicles that are apparently rental cars, with a federal force that's intervening in a state, and that both the mayor and the governor have said, get out. We do not need you here. You know, we're handling our local policing power. And the federal government said, no, you know, we're going to go ahead and stay there. That's not okay. And whether or not you agree with any of, you know, the graffiti or the property crimes that are occurring, there is not violence sufficient enough for there to be any federal forces there, particularly not without the request of the local government. You know, you'd have to go back to segregationist law to see what sort of things are going to trigger when a federal force can essentially come in without a governor's permission, or you know, without the request of local leaders. And it is it's astonishing, and that's not the way it works. You know, we are essentially being told that we are losing our First Amendment right. And our First Amendment right means we have to suck it up on a lot of things, right? We have to hear things all the time that we maybe find offensive or unpleasant. You will often hear me defend things that I find just horrific. And I don't defend the statement, but I defend the person's right to be a jackass if they want to, because that is protected speech, and you are not protected from the consequences of that speech. You might lose your job, you might lose business, you might have other things that are problematic in the marketplace and in society. You're not protected from those society consequences, but you are protected from consequences from your government. And right now, our federal government is eroding that. So I don't care how offensive you are. I'm most certainly going to demand that your right to express yourself is protected from, unjust and unlawful prosecution. As long as you are not threatening with some sort of credibility. Oh, I apologize. I always forget to turn this off, so give me just a second. Hang on just a sec. There we go. That was the internet telling me that this is live. But as long as you are not credibly threatening directly somebody with some sort of real threat of harm, you should be protected in almost any scenario from your government. And that is not what's occurring. We have two really big things that are problems. One is that that speech is not protected from the government. That's becoming a problem because it should be. Those federal forces should not be there. They should not be intervening in the way they are. The other thing, and this is something I've talked about several times, this is happening nationally. We've got some massive abuses with policing power. Policing power is generally a state and lower power. There are some times when the federal government can come in, but generally it's one of those enumerated powers. If you look at when people talk about enumerated powers, and that whole clause of everything else is left to the states. Policing powers is generally a state power. Again, like anything in law, there's exceptions, but we'll just say the general rule is that it's a state level issue. So we've certainly got some real issues with not just non-violent protesters being attacked, but speech being attacked and disproportionate attacks. You are allowed to say offensive things to a police officer if they're not threatening without being assaulted. That you shouldn't be assaulted from merely saying your opinion, even if it's directly to a police officer. They are a government agency. They are not allowed to interact with you in those harmful ways. But that's not what we're seeing. We are seeing people having their speech trampled on, and we're seeing police, not necessarily just police, it's also federal government, it's a range of police forces. But when I say police, I mean police power. We're seeing police power used to assault people on the regular, and that is not okay. So watch carefully who is pushing back on this, because this is something that across the spectrum, Republicans, Democrats, everybody should be pushing back on this. This is not acceptable. And I've seen a couple of Republicans speaking out, though, with perhaps slightly less credibility than I would hope for. But I think even Rand Paul said something about it. We do not want this kind of precedent set. We do not want this to become the norm, because that's fascism. The assaults, the quelling of speech, that's fascism. And we do not want to be a fascist country. We want to be a democracy. So push back on that. Make sure you're reaching out to your elected officials and say, hey, we need to be making sure this doesn't happen in our local state. If you're someplace like Oregon, say, get them out. We've seen a few people, well, not a few, quite a few people respond how Americans tend to do. I feel like maybe our federal government forgot that of all the countries on the planet, America might be the most contrarian country that exists. Maine is particularly contrarian, even for even for being American. But so the response to moms, a whole bunch of moms went out and sort of formed a barrier. The response to that was that they were pepper sprayed, and of course the moms showed up in greater droves. That's a response that we see in places like Hong Kong when they attack protesters. More protesters show up, and I think that's definitely the strategy we should be taking. I am surprised and disappointed we don't see more of our constitutionalists and our open carry advocates out there at these protests and saying this is not okay. You know, whether or not we agree with what they're protesting, this is an overreach of government. So you should be looking for this across the spectrum. This shouldn't be a political issue. People are trying to, you know, polarize it into political points of view, but whether Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Socialist, should be an across the spectrum, everybody's on the same page point of view. This is something where the majority of Americans either do or should agree. It's sort of like net neutrality, where upwards of 90% of people should agree on this. Every American should agree on the freedom of speech. It is something that makes us unique amongst the world. We have some of the most protected free speech on the planet, if not the most protected free speech on the planet, and we need to be very careful about safeguarding it. I haven't gotten very many questions. I don't have a whole lot more to say. I've been working pretty enthusiastically the last few days, and I've got another week or so where I've got a really heavy caseload that I'm trying to manage. If you are interested in finding me online, you can find me on Twitter at Tiffany Bond. I also have some of the court filings probably at the end of the week. All the court filings will be up on my website, which is bond4.me. If you have any questions that you want me to answer in this chat format, but you're not available Tuesdays at 7 or Saturdays at 8 a.m., you can always email them in. I'm happy to talk about it as well. My email is tiffany@bond4.me, or you can send them to me on Twitter. And I hope you guys have a wonderful week. It's supposed to be a very pleasant day, at least until the late afternoon tomorrow. So I hope you are getting out there and enjoying the nice weather to exercise and walk around in. And I hope you get to play a little bit this summer. I will see you all back on Saturday at 8 a.m. And I hope you get out there, push hard on your elected officials, and push hard on protecting your freedom of speech. Thank you.